Welcome to the Spirit of Business episode number 51, Crafting the Perfect Business and Life with Matt Murphy and Sarah McCrum.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Matt. I want to introduce everybody today to a guest. This is only the second time ever on the Spirit of Business that we have invited a guest to come and share the recording with us. And our guest today is called Doron Milner, who is, of course, a business owner. And he has, I think, a really fascinating story to tell. In fact, just before we started recording now, he told me the title of a talk that he's going to do for the board of a local business. So why don't we start right there, Doron? Tell us the title of that talk and then a little bit about who you are, and we will let it flow from there on.
Sure. I was asked to do a talk for a business board, and they didn't tell me the topic. I assumed it was more around business or what the business does, but the topic I chose was how I crafted the perfect business and life with the help of clinical depression. So that was kind of what I chose to go with, and I figured not many business people would have had someone talk about that, or at least talk openly about it. So I thought at least I'd have their attention, and it might not be as normal, if you like, as they would regularly be used to.
Well, why don't we talk a little bit then about that, because there are so many business owners who may experience depression or may experience anxiety, which so often goes hand in hand with depression, or may just be experiencing milder things. They won't put it down to a full-on label, but that they're not feeling as confident as they were before. And these are all on a spectrum, and they affect your ability to do business. So it'd be really great to hear a little bit about your experience and how you did actually put your life together around this very personal experience.
Yeah, I don't know where to start, but I think in managing depression over the years and in speaking to various people to help me manage that, I started acquiring a lot of tools to help me cope with life and cope with work and cope with owning my own business and living a pretty, at times, stressful life. And the kind of depression that I had it's a high functioning type of depression. So no one really knows that I got it, and I can do a hell of a lot while also wanting to kill myself at the same time. I could even do stand-up comedy and make people laugh and be seriously depressed. So it was quite unusual to have that. And I kind of learned to hide it, even though I wasn't really trying to hide it, but also really cope with it. And then what I realized is that through business and through becoming more successful in business and taking on more leadership roles in the voluntary things that I did and whatnot, that a lot of the, I guess, attributes, if you like, or things that I was using to manage depression was making my business a really enviable kind of business and falling in line with good business principles. So it was helping me naturally create a business that is scalable, a business that has an annuity income, a business that relies on a small team, a business that you can take anywhere, a business that allows a work-life balance. So all of these things were kind of happening out of necessity rather than me thinking about it too much at the time. It would be like, well, how do I need to set this up so that if I don't want to wake up tomorrow morning and get out of bed and go to work, my business will still function? Or how do I do this that I can get out of a meeting if I don't want to have, a meeting because I feel terrible, or whatever it was. Sometimes it was I don't want to talk to anyone. So it's like, how am I going to give amazing customer service if I don't want to talk to anyone? And I'd actually worked through these problems and started creating, like I said, an amazing business and an amazing life and an amazing work-life balance through the tools that I was picking up to manage my depression, if that makes sense. It's a little bit weird.
That's amazing, Doron. And I was just wondering, when you were talking about where to start in the journey, I've just completed a course called the Mental Health First Aid course, which is designed to sort of identify potential mental health problems in people and then sort of provide a pathway on where they could potentially go and seek some help. But one of the things that we were speaking about was, first of all, why people don't sort of reach out in the first place around the fact of, to try and get some help. But part of that is because they don't really identify they've actually got any issue in the first place, because I think it's normal what they're experiencing. And I think that when you're in business, that stress is heightened even more so because of the fact that you've got so much on your plate and a lot of stress, and that sort of moves into potential to potentially these particular issues. So I'm just interested to know that, were you diagnosed prior to going in business, or was it actually business actually helped you understand more about depression?
Yeah, no, I knew before I was in business. I was quite young when I started having issues, around 15 or so, and I started having to get help for that. So I kind of knew that I had something, but it's also not an easy thing to diagnose, and especially back then, it was a long time ago. I just didn't cope in the same way. So I kind of knew that I had something, and something that wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't quite right. And I had a lot of help along the way, seeing different kind of people, from psychologists to just counselors and psychiatrists as well. And then, yeah, I went into business much later. Well, actually, I started my first business when I was around 18 or 19. I really enjoyed that. And then that kind of went from there. But I had it even working, for other people, and before I became a business owner. So I really started building that war chest, if you like, early on, without realizing how much it's actually going to help me as a business owner, and in creating this kind of lifestyle that I need. It's not even that I want it, I need it.
I love what you said before too about the high functioning depression. I've seen that a lot actually
Yeah.
in business, and understand it, sort of that particular concept
Mm.
around how you can be high functioning but feel quite terrible at the same time internally. So
Yeah.
that makes a huge amount of sense. And yeah, I'd like to sort of understand that a bit more, if you're able to explain that.
Well, it's I mean, there's certain personalities and people that like are high achievers. I don't really consider myself a high achiever, but other people do. I do a lot of things, and I get heavily involved in a lot of things. And the thing is that when I'm not feeling down or depressed, or when I'm feeling really much myself and in flow and in tune with myself, I can do a hell of a lot of stuff and take on a hell of a lot of stuff, and it's amazing. But then when I am down, I can't do anything. So it's really quite a big swing in that. So I've got to be careful, because there was times where I'd be doing a lot, and it would be amazing, and then I'd get depressed, and that might last weeks, and then all of that would really amplify and would worsen my depression, because I feel so stressed and that I couldn't cope with anything. I might be on the board of at that time, like where I was really struggling, I was the owner of 3 companies. I was heavily involved in surf lifesaving, on the board of surf lifesaving. I ran my own charity in Kenya. I had a lot of stuff going on. And then it's like, this is amazing. And then all of a sudden, I want to kill myself, and what am I going to do? And I don't want to get out of bed, and I want to get rid of all the businesses and quit everything. And so the high functioning stuff, it's difficult for other people. Like you're saying, you did the course. It's much more difficult to identify people that suffer depression when they're high functioning. But what I needed to do as that kind of person is, each time something came up, I had to work out, how am I going to manage this when I'm feeling really down? And what checks and balances am I going to put in place? So when I joined the board of the Surf Lifesaving for North Bondi, and I was the head of lifesaving there, that was an incredibly stressful role. And they'd been asking me for 5 years to take on that role. And I wouldn't take it on because of my depression, basically. And then I decided to take it on, but instead of just taking it on, I went and I sat down with the board, and I said, look, this is why I don't want to take on this role. I suffer from severe depression. When I am, I know you see the one side of me. This is the side that you don't see, and that no one really sees. This is what happens when I get down. This is what you need to look out for. This is how you need to manage me. This is what you need to do to make sure that I'm safe and I'm going to be okay. And this is what you need to do to support me in this role. And I will do this role amazingly. But one day I might have a bit of a wobble, and this is how you can manage that. And if you're okay with that, I'm happy to join this board. And I think that was really refreshing for them. A, that I was really open and honest and could kind of articulate that to them. They kind of weren't used to that. And B, that I'd said to them that I might need help. And I told them how to help me. And that happened. Those instances happened. And I think some of them forgot, and they were like, oh, can't you just do this? I was like, no, remember that conversation we had? You need to find someone else, because for the next 4 days, I'm not going to be able to do that. And they managed, and I managed in that role and handled it really well. Yeah, I don't even remember what your question was, but I think that's around the high functioning stuff. You can manage it well if you're open and honest with people, and you think about what's the worst case scenario. So like with my charity in Kenya, I didn't want any of the boys and girls to be left out if I closed the charity. So I had to figure out, how is this going to continue if I decided to walk away tomorrow? And will anyone not go to school? And will anyone not have food? And will anyone not have clothing if I close my doors tomorrow? And then I start working out that process. And that, by the way, helps you step out of your business as a doer and lets you work on your business as a business person rather than being involved in the nitty gritty and the day to day. It helps you, work on the business, free up time for yourself, free up time for your family, which is, again, another thing that really helps in your business life.
Yeah, it certainly does. And it's forced you to do things that other people sort of want to do, but they don't do from the disciplines perspective. So
they need clinical depression. That's what's going to help them get this done. I can help them with that. I can help them get depressed, and then I'll help them get out of it.
Yeah, it's quite funny because I spend a lot of my time talking to businesses, and I have a lens on myself where I talk about, how do I make myself redundant in a business, because that is a similar sort of type principle.
Same thing.
Same thing. It's just coming from a different angle. And I certainly get that. But the discipline and the self-awareness and then the confidence that you demonstrated, those three aspects in that story that you spoke about with regards to speaking to the board of the Surf Life Saving Club is amazing. So where did that sort of stem from, that sort of confidence at that particular point in time where you could sort of, really feel confident enough to have these conversations with people?
I think that everyone has their own kind of journey with this, and there's a lot of stigma around it, and there still is, even though it's really come to light. It's an almost impossible kind of illness, if you like, to understand. It's almost impossible to understand it if you don't suffer from it, and people suffer from it in different ways. There's people that suffer from different kind of anxieties that I just don't understand, I don't get, but at least I appreciate that I can't get it, and I have more empathy for it. My journey was more that I'd started speaking about it a little bit more openly, and my main fear around it was that it was going to affect my business, that if people read a blog or heard about something about me, and I had quite a close network of friends and a close network of people that came to me for business from the surf club, from business networking groups, things like that. My fear was that if someone thought that I was depressed or struggled to get out of bed or work on things, that do they want that sort of person or business owner managing their digital marketing? So that's where my fear was. So I kind of had to reconcile it in a way and say, I'm good at what I do. This is part of my personality at the moment. Thankfully, it's not so much now. And I don't need to worry about losing people over this. And I started speaking to people a bit more openly about it, starting with close friends, people that I worked closer with, then started helping other people that were kind of suffering, and then started speaking to people randomly. They started contacting me when they kind of found out. I think I did a Facebook post once on mental illness day or something like that, and it really shocked a lot of people because they all said, I had no idea, like, how do you do so much and have so much and such a full life and have this debilitating thing? And then people started asking me questions about, friends of theirs that had committed suicide and why this happened or why that happened. And I started helping them understand the illness a lot more. And that gave me a lot more confidence to open up to strangers, I guess, and to people where I felt more vulnerable that I wouldn't be allowed a position or I wouldn't get a job because of it. And that kind of led to the surf club thing, where I was in a place where I wasn't really ashamed anymore, and I was comfortable enough with myself and my achievements. And I knew that this is what I kind of came to. I knew that I was the right person at that time for that job. And multiple people had been asking me to step into that role. And I knew that they wouldn't be asking me if they didn't believe that I was. And I knew that if I told them I had depression, it wouldn't change it, because they knew what I was doing which is why they wanted me in that role. So that allowed me to kind of speak to them, because I didn't feel like I had anything to lose, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So it comes from the fact that, you drew upon the confidence of being good at what you do and being good in business and having a reputation, which then allowed you to then sort of take that leap of faith. But it's still a big leap of faith to be able to go from...
Yeah, it was big.
and you would have gone through some, I suppose, some doubt at that particular point in time as to whether you could feel confident to come out from a business perspective, but also from a sort of, going into the community point of view. And certainly think that that's quite amazing from that perspective.
Yeah, I think what I found, sorry,
yep,
Matt, I think
go.
what I found, it just popped into my head, is that building up to that, each time I spoke to people, my vulnerability opened things up and helped them. And it actually created almost like an admiration for me that I was able to speak about something so personal and so intimate and so difficult that it let their guard down. So each time I slowly had a conversation in different circumstances, it kind of built up my confidence because I saw I was actually positively impacting on other people's lives by talking about what I was struggling with. And that kind of boosted my confidence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, hugely. And I think that vulnerability is quite amazing, and it does connect, as we understand, and a lot of people speak about this particular point about vulnerability allows greater connection with each other, and clearly that's been the result of it. But there's obviously a risk involved in doing so, because as leaders in organizations, I suppose there's a reluctance for us because we're meant to be seen to be strong and leading and out front and doing all the things that you have this impression that a good leader looks like, and that we've probably been hardwired about for many, many years. And I think the world understands that, that's not necessarily the way the future works in terms of, from a leadership perspective, is how I'm starting to understand what true leadership really is all about.
Well, for me, true leadership, and I think I even said this to that board at the time, I shifted what I thought about leaders as well. And I started looking at leaders that I admired, and I started thinking about leadership, not in my business, because my business was a much smaller organization than the surf club. The surf club had 2,000 members, had a big board. I was in charge of all the patrolling members, which is 500. It was one of the busiest beaches in the world. There was a lot of government kind of input and grants that we needed to do, and a lot of social things that we had to kind of attend to. There was a lot in there. And I thought about leadership at that time and why people kind of thought I'd be good for that role. And the way that I defined a good leader kind of after that was, for me, a really good leader is someone that encourages and identifies other leaders and helps people become leaders. A good leader isn't someone who others follow. It's irrelevant how many people follow them. It's who they push to become leaders. It's almost like the way that wolves lead, like from behind the pack, not the front of the pack. So if you're leading from behind and pushing people forward, rather than seeing how many people are following you and looking up to you, by creating leaders, I think you're a good leader. It shows that you're not afraid to build people up. It shows that you're not afraid to give up power and let someone run with something, and it's a very abundant way of thinking as well. You're just pushing everyone up. And for me, I had to do that because I had to create surf patrols and have surf patrol captains that could lead their teams. And by just doing it is one way, but by really helping people become a patrol captain or step into a role and delegating and teaching people to do something instead of holding things back so that you always look good and that you're always the best at something, it just wasn't how I wanted to lead, and it wasn't what I thought a good leader does. Have all these people look up to them and admire them and, blow smoke up their backside, if you like. That's
so where do you find, so where do you draw inspiration from? So you spoke about people that you admired from a leadership perspective, and also probably a second question to that is that, does that help you in your dark moments sort of get through that period of time, or what does actually help you get through that period of time as well? So probably two questions in that.
Yeah. So I guess from leaders like that, my favorite would probably be Nelson Mandela, not only because I'm South African, but because of this huge amount of empathy that he had, and his unbelievable ability to forgive. I just found that astonishing. And then same thing, to really bring an entire country together that is so divided like that, and and really lead also with the people. So from behind, through example, but also by being humble and also promoting other people into those positions of leadership, to let them fly and leave something better off than what you started it, but also with enabling other people to carry on that sort of legacy. So I always look back and looked at his quotes and thought about what he did. And the other thing that I loved about Nelson Mandela was this concept, which is like a tribal concept. I think it's from the Xhosa tribe, around Ubuntu. So there's this thing called Ubuntu, which is community, and it's not really an exact translation, but it's we all affect each other, and whatever one does affects someone else, and it's about everyone looking after everyone and everyone supporting everyone. And if you do something to one person, that affects the many. It's a very hard concept to kind of explain, but that's it in a nutshell. And then other people, probably like Simon Sinek, which most people would know, in the way that he leads and the way that he talks about teams and leadership and things like that. I always find him kind of inspiring, and he always makes me feel better when I'm struggling with business kind of team or managing people. I don't like managing people, ironically. I think I'm good with people, but I don't really like managing them. And I think that helps me. That's always why I've kept a small team. It's not something that I enjoy so much. Maybe I'm not hard enough. I don't know. But I think that covers both your questions. Is that right? No, there was the other part.
Yeah, it was probably as an extension for that, and a lead into the how do you manage
it,
those really down times, and in terms of you know that you're going to go into these particular phases of your life based on the condition that you've got, and then how do you actually sort of get through those periods of time successfully?
The easiest answer I'm going to give you is the hardest. It's kind of like, I was once in Kenya trying to get accommodation, and the guy told me that the cheapest option is the most expensive, which also makes sense in a funny kind of way. But the easiest solution is the hardest, and the easiest solution is to eat, sleep, and exercise, which is pretty much what any doctor will tell you. And if you can really do that well, so eat well, sleep well, and exercise regularly, for me, in my personal opinion, that I would be really, really, in top shape a lot of the time. And I'd need to elaborate on that a bit further, but that's the easiest way. So for example, I wanted to be in a good space for this podcast today, and I haven't been in the best space for the last week or so. So I went for a surf this morning, and that was amazing. Cleared my head. I've been much more productive than I normally would have been. I made sure I ate breakfast. I made sure I ate lunch. I made sure I drank a lot of water today. And I showed up here in a much better mood and much more clearer and much better version of myself. And that's just on the eating side of it. And the fitness, I guess, because I did the surf. Being in nature really helps. So you want to find a place where you can clear your head. There's so many things, and especially if you live in a city, so many things that get into your head, and there are lots of little things that you don't even realize are irritating you. So depending on what you have, but for me, noise and light pollution isn't great. So to hear someone jackhammering every day isn't good. So I lived in Bondi and worked in Bondi Junction, and that's been under construction for about 20 years, those two suburbs. So hearing like every morning, it just isn't good for you, right? Whether you realize it or not. People hooting at you in traffic isn't good. It just upsets you. And some people don't mind, but other people, it slowly starts to grind on them and get into them. And I had to make some pretty radical decisions around that. Again, the same way that I looked at business, I went and I looked at my life, and I'm like, all right, what really annoys me all the time? Okay, hearing drilling first thing in the morning. What am I going to do about that? I'm going to have to move. I'm going to have to move to a place that's quieter and that there's less drilling. All right, what don't I like about traffic? I don't like people hooting. I don't like when they get irritated with me. That can affect me for 3 or 4 hours of my day. All right, so I'm going to have to move my office. This is where I work. Let's move within 3 kilometers of where I live. Another thing I didn't like that was irritating me. I used to get anxiety about about making dinner for some reason. I don't know why, but it used to, being in a shopping center, lots of bright lights, lots of noise, lots of electricity, wigged me out. Then going into Woolworths, and there's so many options. I'd always buy what I didn't need and what I didn't want. I didn't know what to have for dinner. It would be like a whole meltdown, full anxiety, freak out. I want to kill myself. No good. Okay, so what am I going to do? All right, I need to find out how I can get healthy foods. And then I started using things, initially Uber Eats, which wasn't good, but then like Marley Spoon and you know, those things where they send you the recipes and they make it really easy and you cook the food and you start getting better at that. And then working that out. So I need to eat better. I'm eating 5 takeaway meals and I'm cooking 2. That's no good. So let's fix that. And then I'd probably spend a month kind of fixing it, and then that would be fixed. And then I'd move on to the next thing. And then there were some really drastic changes. You know, I moved full location. I moved from Sydney up to Byron Bay. So now there's no traffic, there's no noise, there's no light pollution. I see the stars every night. It's very quiet. I don't have to put money in parking meters, another thing that irritated me a lot. There's no Uber Eats or fast food, so I got to cook food. So that was more drastic, but amazing. My productivity went up 30%. I've got more time with my family and my business is doing better. So you ask a business advisor, and I know you do business advice. If I say to you, Matt, how can I work less? I want to work 20% less, but I want to grow my business by 30% and I want more time with my family. You try work that out.
I think you've done that successfully by the sounds of things. and tell me about your family. Just love to know a bit more about the profile there, because that obviously impacts upon, you know, all of us in terms of every aspect of our life.
Yeah, look, I'm very blessed to have an amazing family. I've got a loving wife. We've, I think, been together 6 years. I'm going to get in trouble for saying I think, but I'm no good with time. So time kind of stretches with me. I've got a 3-year-old daughter and a 7-month-old daughter. So I'm right in the thick of really heavy parenting, if you like. And that's affecting sleep, one of my mental health triangles. I've got ways around that, but that's been really challenging, but also unbelievably rewarding. I've always wanted to be a dad. I always wanted to get married. I got married quite late in my life, and I had kids quite late in my life. And I always said, you know, having kids is a young man's game. It's it takes a lot of energy, mental and physical, and it's challenging, but it's probably the most difficult, rewarding thing I'll ever do, or the most rewarding, difficult thing I'll ever do. It's I love it. I love having a family, and I love my family, and I think that it's having children. Firstly, getting married creates an external part of you. It's a lot of people think they lose stuff when they get married, or that they're not going to have as much this, or they're not going to have as much that. They see the pros, but for me, it creates an other. You know, there's me, you, and now there's us. So there's so much that comes with that other that I really like. And then having kids, you just pour everything of you, me, and other into another entity that it is really amazing. It really makes you less selfless, but it also makes you want to be a better person, because they just copy everything you do. If you want to know how to be a good parent, just be a better person. You know, just be better, eat better, say things better, speak nicely, be better, and your kids will be great. Like, love them and be better. And the other thing I love about like kids and family is that all of your emotions are just like times 10, which can be really hard, but everything's just amplified. I just find, you know, my love is so much bigger. My fear is so much bigger. My anger is so much bigger. My frustration is so much bigger. And I love emotions. I love all emotions, and I love kind of understanding and feeling those emotions. So to have them amplified and then to try work through them with young people is fascinating for me. And I love it. Yeah. I've never really talked about that.
Yeah, well, I think you articulated it extremely well, and it's interesting you talk about you know, designing your life effectively to accommodate, you know, that sense of balance. Because if I reflect upon, you know, you say you were later on as a husband and a father, if you had been running businesses in Bondi and in the old life, I wonder if things might have been more difficult at an earlier age. I wonder if things might have been more difficult and amplified some of the you know, the stresses that you were going through.
I think that I wouldn't have known myself as well. So because I've been working on myself for so long, the longer I worked on myself, the easier it was for me to understand myself, and the easier my relationships were. So definitely I might not have been as good a dad. I don't really know how good a dad I am now, but I know that I've got time and I've got patience and a hell of a lot of love to give. And I think that I still probably would have scaled back because I know that there's only so much I can cope with. So when I started a family, I kind of scaled back a bit. And, you know, when I got married and then when I had kids, I kind of scaled back a bit more. And when I say scaled back, I started doing less stuff for me and in business and in volunteer, and started putting more energy into my family. So you've only got a certain amount of bandwidth. And wherever, I don't know what Tony Robbins says, something about wherever your energy goes, wherever your focus flows, your energy goes, or something like that. So whatever you focus on is going to grow, basically. And whatever's important, you've got to put more focus into. So I had to kind of shut down the other businesses, shut down the charity, and decide, all right, what do I want to focus on? So I want to focus on my family. I want to focus on my business. So I kind of closed everything down except those two things. And then when there was more bandwidth and I created more time through my business, I took on volunteer stuff again and went back into lifesaving because I really love that. So I kept it those three things. I'm going to volunteer and help my community, but not on such a high level. I'm going to really focus on my business and I'm going to focus on my family. And I probably wouldn't have done that as well and as quickly if I was younger and didn't have as much experience, I'd say. And I probably wouldn't have spent as much time with my family as I do now.
So it's worked out really well in terms from a timing perspective, but it's from that point of view. Now, Sarah, I've been hogging Doron the whole session, so
I noticed.
Hopefully that's okay. I'm sort of saying maybe I should stop hogging him and see what you would like to have a chat to Doron about.
I can see, first of all, I can see all the experience of so many business owners kind of speaking through you as you ask your questions. It's like there's so much value. And also I do know Doron already, but that's just me personally. So, but you know, the question that's been playing on my mind, Doron, is about your story with purpose, because so often the experience of depression is a complete lack of purpose and motivation. And yet the sense that I have with you is that purpose is an important part of your life. So I'm very curious to see how that's played out for you.
I think you're right. There was always a part of me that was always wanting to have a purpose and to do more and give more and kind of figure out more what my purpose is, but how I kind of wanted to leave this world and why I was actually here. Like, what was I really here to do, and what is it that I can actually give of value to this world that's unique to me. I believe that everyone has something unique to them. And they're lucky if they find that and can do that, and they're even luckier if they can do that in business. Being depressed, you lose that. You lose that sense of value. When you get down, and this is really, really difficult to explain and a difficult concept to explain, but being down or being sad is not being depressed. And I'm fine when I'm down and when I'm sad. And I can be fine when I'm going through depression. But when you get far into that, your mind kind of negates all of the positive things. And it strips it back. And the only way I can kind of explain it is it becomes more and more a tunnel vision. And that tunnel and that end of the tunnel kind of becomes, my life is not really pointless. I don't really give anything to anyone. It's a bit of a hoax. And everything will be fine if I wasn't even here. And that becomes stronger and stronger, to the extent that even something that is like unbelievable to someone. So like, how could you rationalize that your children would be better off without you? It's almost impossible as a good mother or father to think that you could think that. But in the depth of a depression, it's not even that you think that, it's that doesn't exist. It's like, there won't be any problems if I'm not here. It's not even like, will there be, won't there be, how would I feel? You can't think on that rational level. And that's why people, they hear about someone maybe that committed suicide or something, and they go, but they loved their cat and they didn't even open the door for them. And it's like, they're not there. They're nowhere near there. They're like, but no one found them and the cat, this and that. And it's like, because it didn't exist. The pain was so great. And where they were at, everything was kind of stripped away, and there was only one solution for them. And that solution was the only solution that they had. So when you're in there, it's very difficult to find that purpose. It's very hard to come back from. But when you're out of it, if you're a person that does value life, which I do, on a very, very high level, then finding that purpose and also finding a purpose in business and everything that you do is quite easy. So it comes down to the person that you really are, not what you're suffering from, and then being able to manage how you suffer or the ailments that you kind of have that lets you get back into that. And those can be really, really simple. People often ask me, how can I help this person? Or this person suffers, how can I help them? It might be just calling them and not even asking them about their depression, but just chatting to them about their day. It might be, once a friend of mine just said, go and take a really nice picture of the ocean, like do something really artistic. And that was enough. That was enough for me. It did it. It kind of got me back, really, really simple stuff like that. Sometimes it's more complicated. I don't want to minimize anyone else's sufferings and things like that, but it's different strokes for different folks. But it can be really difficult to help someone, but also incredibly easy as well. I think I answered the question. I always go off on a tangent. Sorry.
No, you always answer the question, actually. You just probably don't always realize. So as far as you've come in your life, and for all of us, we're where we are. We don't know how much more of it we have ahead, but it looks like there's quite a lot. What do you feel, or what are you here for? Who are you?
Well, thankfully, you've actually helped me quite a bit with this, and I've been on a long journey, but I've enjoyed our chats about this sort of stuff. I know that as part of my kind of personality that I help people in different ways. And I know that people get value from what I thought were seamless, meaningful conversations, because it's cropped up when I bump into someone that I haven't seen in 10 years or 20 years. They always kind of remind me of something that I said or a conversation that we had that really helped them, or that really changed their perspective, or really changed their life, or the way that they dealt with something specific, which for me was just a chat or a nothing. It was kind of a throwaway. So it was very easy. So I know that that's a part of my purpose, because it's something that comes very easy and very naturally, and it's also helpful to others. I don't know exactly like what my purpose is, but I know that I enjoy being out there. So like, as in talking to people or to groups of people, being in the limelight a little bit. I don't mind. Like, I enjoy doing stand-up comedy and things like that when I did it at a young age. And I really enjoy helping people. I always wanted to be a paramedic or a fireman or something like that. I was in hospitality as well. And I'm quite heavily involved in surf lifesaving, as you know. So there's something around that in my overall purpose, if you like, or my cosmic purpose. I think is to help people really open up a bit more, let down their guard, face their fears, and be more vulnerable, and to actually see the immense strength in vulnerability. I think people don't realize that showing vulnerability is so much stronger than people that can hide their emotions. You see this warrior as the person that doesn't cry, that's always ready to stand up and fight. And especially men, they see that role as that fighter and that warrior. But if you express your vulnerability and you're okay with that, and you're not scared of someone using that against you, and they can't use that as weaponry against you, for me, that's an unbelievable strength. And I like to think that I now have that strength and can help other people find that strength.
Can you imagine how business would change if the general habit of business owners and people working in businesses was to be that open?
Yeah, look, I've always said that we need more female politicians because they're generally more open. Not all, but most. Women are just more open with that, and with their feelings and expressing that. And I think the world would be a better place, and business would be better, and governments would be better if people were more open and vulnerable, and also if they had just a high emotional intelligence, understanding even a simple apology. Like, people still apologize by saying, I'm sorry that this upset you. That's not an apology, because you're not being sorry for what you did that upset that person. You're apologizing that they reacted that way to what you said. And Prime ministers still say things like that. They can't take responsibility and apologize openly. And, you know, that's something for me that's very basic. But for some people, they go, what the hell are you talking about? I apologize. I'm like, well, you didn't really. You tried to, but you didn't. And for business owners to be able to lead a team like that, to understand how people are feeling, to check in, you know, what's going on in your life? How are you feeling personally and professionally? How can I help you personally and professionally? Instead of saying this person's not performing and sitting there, why aren't you performing and why haven't you met your targets? What's happening in life? Is anything going on, you know, that I might be able to help you with? Are you having a hard time? Instead of approaching it with, you know, why haven't you been meeting your targets? How can I help you, you know, reach your targets? Maybe think about the person before thinking about the business. And I think Simon Sinek speaks to that as well. I remember him talking about that, but that's exactly how I feel about leading, like from a more emotional place.
Yes, I spoke to an advisor the other day, and it was Monday morning, and I said, how are you? And he said, oh, I'm okay. I said, that doesn't sound very enthusiastic. He said, no, after the weekend I've had. And I thought probably, you know, his wife is furious with him, or I don't know, his kids are doing something awful, and he's got to come into work and function in a certain way. And actually all of it, there's just one person in the middle of all of that. I do have one thing. Oh, go on.
Yeah, no, it's very hard to also, like, on that, kind of put things into compartments. I mean, men are a little bit better at that, but it's very hard to switch off one part of your personality and then switch on another part of your personality. And it's hard for business owners to leave the business stuff and then go home and turn on the dad or the husband, or to leave that and then turn on, you know, the son or the brother or whatever it is. It's a difficult thing to do.
And it's even hard to do it and feel sane, and like to feel like a whole person at the same time. Because you end up feeling like you're in boxes, and that doesn't feel human.
Exactly.
I did have a question. This is probably a quick throwaway question at the end, but what's with the comedy? Do you reckon the comedy is going to come back? You've talked about it, doing it when you were younger. You've made me laugh a lot at times. You've been more serious today. I'm curious.
I have been more serious, sorry. It was more of a serious conversation. Well, it felt like that. I don't know. I stopped because I stopped feeling funny, which is what I told people at the time. I really love it. I love the creative side of it and the intellectual side of it. I don't think that I will start doing it again. I'm not sure, but I might start talking more and being... I don't know. I'll start thinking about doing things like this a bit more and maybe injecting a little bit more humor to kind of get that message across. And I know that things are absorbed better when there's humor attached to it. And they're remembered as well, more with kind of humor injected in there. But I know that I kind of lost that for a long time, and I got very serious. And I know because even on good occasions, my speeches were good speeches, but they were serious. You know, people ended up crying more at the end of my speeches than laughing, which was also a good result. I still got that was an amazing speech, you know, but people were crying. And I sort of noticed that whether it was a wedding or a birthday or something, they were really heartfelt, open speeches, but less laughter, more crying. And I think I want to kind of switch that the other way now and start thinking about injecting a bit more laughter. So maybe it'll come back. There might be opportunities for... and maybe I'll do some open mics in Byron Bay where there's a bit less pressure and no one knows me.
I think we'll have to invite you back and we can choose a slightly lighter topic, or we can take a lighter tone with a similar kind of topic. Sure.
Well, we'll let you ask more questions and less from Matt. How's that?
That's my receipt. So obviously I was too serious today, but I like... But that's okay. I was more intrigued into obviously what we were talking about, but I think humor is significantly important in every aspect of life. So I'm looking forward to the next chat where we can have a bit more of a laugh as well. So that'll be good.
Good stuff. Thank you.
We've just been warming up today, so thank you very much, Doron Milner. It's really been fascinating, and you're such an example of what you're talking about, because you are so open and you talk about being open and you know the benefit of being open, and it's really easy to feel around you how much difference that makes to everybody. So thank you so much for sharing that with us and with everybody who's going to listen to this.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure, and I really enjoyed it. And I hope that adds some value to whoever does listen to this. Yeah, in some way.
And thank you from me too. It's been an amazing chat, and I think you're once again an amazing example of is great leadership in business, and that vulnerability piece is so important to get the message out to people that they're not alone, that they can actually, that other people are struggling just like they are in business too. So thank you so much for today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure, Matt. It was really nice to meet you and nice to chat with you as well.
Thank you for listening to The Spirit of Business with Matt Murphy and Sarah McCrum. We'll be back next week with another episode. You'll find the show notes with links and other useful information on our website, spiritofbusiness.live. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends.